Our songs acclaim the cessation of a long despair, extol the end of sacrifice born of our will, not weakness. We celebrate the end of that compliant innocence of our millennial trees. The ancient ruins of great Zimbabwe have proved an inspiration to the people of this country to free themselves from a domination by white settlers that began over 100 years ago.
When I came over here, for many months, I traveled in an ox cart. I only covered a corner of the country. Vast, empty, magnificent, fertile. You realize the immense possibilities in that?
The only possibility that anybody sees here is to make as much money as quickly as they can and then go back home and spend it.
I tell you, Jameson, England must expand or perish. There's the making of a great colony here.
You're a bit of a dreamer, aren't you?
Dreamer? Jameson, the dreams of one generation are the commonplaces of the next.
Well, Cecil Rhodes really is a historical figure and not a hero. He managed to get the settlers established not only in southern Rhodesia, northern Rhodesia, and went as far as a bit of what was Nyasaland then, Malawi, and then South Africa itself. He was really the anchor of this of settlers taking a root, especially the English-speaking settlers.
Did he do this by fair means or foul?
Is there any settlers that take anything by fair means? That's never done. It was foul means all through.
There was much of Africa, millions and millions of acres, where there were wild animals and nothing else. We came into an area that was uninhabited, undeveloped. Well, Rhodes got a charter. If we go right back to before the turn of the century, where Rhodes made an agreement with Lobengula.
Mr. Rhodes, the king asked what bargain you would like to make with him.
This.
Yeah.
Mr. Hallam, will you kindly tell him just exactly what's in it?
Yeah. Iswa nini lonki imvume lano.
They paid Lobengula in guns and money and many other things. I don't know the exact details, but you've got to go right back to that history before the turn of the century to find out exactly what happened.
Whereas we agree to deliver to the Royal Kraal 1,000 Martini breech-loading heavy rifles and 100,000 rounds of suitable ball cartridge, I, Lobengula, King of Matabeleland, do grant concession to obtain all metals and minerals in my territories.
Cecil Rhodes and the pioneers came in here. They virtually occupied this land. They did it by continuously cheating the chiefs of the time, of which my grandfather, Kuvima Zama, was the Chinamora at the time. And it was my grandfather that allowed Cecil Rhodes and the Roman Catholic Church priests that came with him as pioneers to build the Chishawasha mission, which is about 15 kilometers east of Harare.
My father was Kadungure Mapondera, son of Gorejena, Morozin tribe. When Europeans came in this country, they went to him and asked for friendship. He said, "You Europeans, how can you ask to be my friend?" Mr. Selos, he said, "Yes, I'm telling you the truth. I am an Englishman. What I say is true." He said, "Though you are an Englishman, I do not believe in what you say. You must have something behind your mind which you are hiding."
What was that?
That was, father knew that he was in need of taking the land from me.
Angisanakananga. The king says, when he gave permission for the great white chief Ulodzi to dig for the yellow dirt, he thought one or two men would come and dig a few holes. He never expected an army to come and dig up his whole country.
The king has given that permission. Does the king lie?
He says the king does not lie. The king says, if they find gold in his kraal, can they dig for it?
Yes.
If they find gold under his very feet, can they dig for it?
Yes.
The white settlers came here to dig gold, to ask for permission to dig gold and to trade with the Africans at the time, but only to turn around the next day and usurp the whole country and to reduce the Africans into sort of serfs and to subjugate them as their colonial slaves.
The land was the source of everything. It was regarded as life itself, and it was, according to the Benguela or his father Mzirikazi, it was held in trust by the king for the people, and no one owned land as an individual. The king himself did not own land. It was held for the people by him. They used it as and when was necessary for whatever purpose that each individual chose to use the land for.
The king says he is desolate.
Oh.
He has betrayed his people and given away his land.
Lobengula found out that he had been tricked by the settlers and suspended the agreement by a letter to the Bechuanaland Times in February 1889. He dispatched 2 envoys to London to see Queen Victoria. She kept them waiting for a week and then declined to see them. By 1896, there was a general uprising. They called it Chimurenga.
Cape Town, March the 26th. The Matabele have revolted in Insega and Filibusi districts and have massacred a number of whites, including the native commissioner, Mr. Bentley. Mr. Selous has expressed the view that strong and immediate measures might quell the insurrection. April the 11th. The whole Matabele nation has now risen, and it is recognized that 1,500 men are wanted to put down the rebellion.
It was superiority of arms that settled the first Chimurenga. and enabled the settlers to subjugate the people, both Ndebele and Shona. 2 spirit mediums were hanged as instigators of rebellion, Nehanda and Kaguwi. The settlers had achieved their aim. Henceforth, the natives were to be restricted as to their movements. By successive land acts, much of the country was allocated for settler activities, without reference to traditional practice. In many places, local people found themselves being forcibly ejected from land they had cultivated for generations.
What took place was these people were squatters on land which had previously been categorized for white land. The country was divided. This was done right at the inception, going back to 23, and it was a condition laid down by the British government, you see. Because if we didn't set aside land for the black people, land incidentally which they didn't have to pay for, it was tribal land, then it would put the white man in a position where with his superior skills and know-how and capital, he could have taken over virtually more and more land until it got to a stage where there wasn't any land left. But that was precluded. Now, for some reason or other, these black people had walked on and just squatted on land which they had no right to be on. And so in compliance with the Act, and it was an Act which had the support of the British government, the Land Apportionment Act, we moved them from the land which was categorized for the white people to land which was categorized for the black people.
Supposedly safeguarding native rights, the Land Apportionment Act actually took the best land for the whites. The native reserves were mostly barren and eroded.
That was the first really iniquitous legislation that the settlers did, because it meant stealing the land from the people. And the people knew it was theft. It was no land was bought. They just decided to choose the best, the prime land of this country and call it European area, in Africa, mind you, and call that the European area. And so we were settled with this land which made our people visitors in towns and in mines, and any area that was supposed to be European area, we were there as visitors and nothing more.
Gutu is now one of the most overcrowded regions of the country. This scene is repeated throughout Zimbabwe. Thousands of small farms reach right up to the boundary, separating the African reserve from the area where only white people could buy land. This land near the Gutu Reserve was divided among 11 white farmers. Here, large areas are not being cultivated at all. Yet on the reserves, there is so little land for planting that people have to grow maize anywhere they can. Since there is not enough land for grazing, many animals die in the dry season. The Chifamba cattle are malnourished and have not given birth to a calf in 2 years.
Africans were given poor soil, mountainous. Europeans were taking good lands. In the plains where they could grow a lot of maize. See?
And were people happy about that?
No, they were not happy.
Much can be said on what has been done to encourage the rural people to accept responsibility in terms of entering into the overall economic pattern of the country instead of continuing on his soil-scratching subsistence level. It meant starting from the grassroots, training field staff and sending them out among the people to demonstrate simple methods of soil conservation and gradually gaining the confidence of the tribal people. The primary task was to teach them to grow sufficient for their own needs, to eliminate starvation. A surplus for sale was a dream of the future, but it is coming true.
That act took almost 78% of the land to the whites and left us just the remainder. And that remainder that was given to Africans was the poorest type of land that is outside the main watersheds of in the agricultural sector. And this is where the Africans were relegated to, And it was an issue that really, I think, was the basis of our struggle, and that gave us this country, because we were able to unite the whole African population against the Land Apportionment Act.
Land was not the only grievance of Africans at that time. Public meetings were called and other matters were discussed, such as taxation, pay and conditions, schools and health services. Properly constituted native associations existed in many places. They were loyal, obedient, and respectful.
All along, African organizations were organizations that drafted or sent in petitions and requesting this, requesting that from a government which in fact was not a government. And in 1957 we decided, no, we are now demanding that which is ours.
1957 was an important year for African liberation. Ghana became independent and hosted the All-African People's Conference in Accra. Inspired by their common cause, delegates returned home determined to organize politically.
The Youth League was a kind of organization which was to resuscitate the former political activities which had been there in the country, but mostly that were being directed by the Native Affairs Department. They were sort of apologetic organizations which went to ask for permission to protest to the native commissioners of the time and things like that. And we, the youth at that time, did not want to do it that way. So we started with the Youth League, which was composed of youth as well as old men that were of active age.
Well, the demands in the early days, comparing them with the demands now, were just like children playing on the football ground. Because comparing them, we find that there was just a nonsense. We were only demanding better treatment. Those people in the reserves were demanding for more cattle, more land, because each man was allowed to only have 5 head of cattle, even if he could have 100. And the land, they were given a small piece of land. And all that was the evil circle of the white man, that an African should not progress economically.
When an African came into town, he entered a different world. A strict color bar operated in shops, hotels, and restaurants.
The aims at that stage were twofold. One is to abolish racial discrimination in all walks of life, which was pervading every aspect of life in colonial Rhodesia, and to establish a multiracial society. But secondly, and most importantly, to establish a self-governing Zimbabwe. In other words, to establish black rule.
If democracy is the will of the people, then by the same token, responsible government should be the duty of the people. We in Rhodesia believe that government should be in the hands of responsible people. In Rhodesia, the vote is available to every race and every creed, provided certain qualifications are achieved. These are determined basically on education, property or income, and as such are moderate in their requirements. Minority rule is a mischievous label used freely by those with envy or who have conquest as their motive.
We said a rule by a small section of the country must go. We must have a government of the people of the country. And this did not mean just black people. It meant all the people who had made this country their home.
But African trade unions and nationalist parties were harassed by the authorities. The Rhodesian African National Congress, formed in 1957, was banned in 1960. It was succeeded by the National Democratic Party, which soon ran into trouble with the authorities itself.
The National Democratic Party organized sabotage to protest against the Southern Rhodesian new constitution. Rioters attacked buildings owned by Africans who don't support their party. Carrying wicker shields against stone throwing, the riot police marched towards the African area where more trouble was expected. The Democratic Party have been menacing colored folk to get them on their side. Extra troops have been mobilized in the drive to restore order. There were plenty of meetings where party leaders protested that the new constitution doesn't give the African a square deal. But so far, there have been no more outbreaks. Perhaps southern Rhodesia has nipped the revolt in the bud.
What stage did you consider that it might be necessary to use a gun?
To use petrol bombs as far back as 1960, and we were the first to use them, but purely as a means of pressure, not really to try and destroy life, but to intimidate the authorities into conceding, as it were, to our wishes.
Did it work?
It didn't work. Then we had demonstrations and strikes. She participated in one of the best organized demonstrations in the country, the women's demonstration. Thousands of them were sent to prison in Salisbury and thousands sent to prison in Bulawayo and Gwelo and Umtali in 1961.
Then, in 1962, black opposition was banned. Overnight, the authorities turned ZAPU from a legitimate political party into an underground resistance. Hundreds were arrested and imprisoned without trial. Resentment began to burn more fiercely. In 1963, the more radical elements, most of them in prison, broke away from ZAPU to form ZANU. Prison became their campaign headquarters. The young Mugabe was to spend 11 years in detention.
Police used to say to me, when I start my speech with the words, the white man here and in South Africa doesn't want another African to open the eyes of another African, then they would just loosen their dogs to me immediately. Then the whole ground, which is full of thousands of people, would go amok, throwing dustbins all over the show, making roadblocks the same evening and doing all sorts of things. There was a lot of havoc. Just by saying a word on the platform, they would listen to me.
I think I made a remark a few days before I was arrested with my colleagues and detained. I said that the cowboys had taken over and they are going to crash onto the rocks. And within 3 days we were arrested. To us, it meant progress. We were taken to various areas in this country, and for 11 years we were excluded from our families and from everything in this country.
We left hurriedly. Ladnabeck said, by 2 o'clock, these people must have moved from that house. You can imagine, children are crying. The firstborn was 11. The second was 9. The third was 8. The fourth was 7. And the youngest was 2.5, leaving those infants there. So we had to leave. We left a shop, a general dealer shop, a bookshop, and he left a school. He had just started for the children who were thrown away by Smiths, because the policy of the white was that don't educate an African, educate a few. If you educate a lot of them, they will run over you.
In thriving Salisbury, old men remember its early days as Fort Salisbury. They first raised the flag in 1890, building perhaps better than they knew. Today, the large African population of the Rhodesian capital looks not to Premier Ian Smith, but to his visitor, the Prime Minister of Britain, to help them in their political aspirations. Mr. Wilson, reopening the negotiations that broke down in London, has pleaded with Mr. Smith not to go through with UDI, the Unilateral Declaration of Independence. And so long as the two statesmen confer together, hope is not extinguished. Indeed, African hopes run high. In all this going and coming, it is sometimes overlooked that in 75 short years, Rhodesia grew from nothing into a highly prosperous country. Today, many white people in Rhodesia wonder if they have a friend in the world. Events have mocked the dream of Cecil Rhodes of a British Africa from Cape to Cairo. The wind of change has indeed swept over the dark continent.
In October of 1965, Mr. Smith and some of his ministers again visited London to resolve the independence deadlock. By now, the futility of the prolonged negotiations and the dawning realization that the British government was conceding more and more to the demands of countries hostile towards Rhodesia were having their effect. Foreign investment was slowing, and people were leaving the country. All this increased the determination of responsible Rhodesians, black and white, mindful of the effects of British policy elsewhere in Africa, to do everything possible to maintain Rhodesia's hard-won civilization.
Smith returned to Salisbury and, ignoring appeals from inside and outside the country, made his historic decision 1 month later.
We, the government of Rhodesia, in humble submission to Almighty God, who controls the destinies of nations, conscious that the people of Rhodesia have always shown unswerving loyalty and devotion to Her Majesty the Queen, and seeking to promote the common good, so that the dignity and freedom of all men may be assured, do, by this proclamation, adopt, enact, and give to the people of Rhodesia the Constitution annexed hereto. God save the Queen.
We realized that the powers that be at that time would never concede political rights to the Africans without we shedding blood.
There was the whole history of our having tried non-violent methods. They had failed completely. And neither the settler regime nor Britain heeded our cries. They just wouldn't move. They wouldn't yield an inch. And so we decided, without any qualms about it, that armed struggle would be the right thing.
I was telling them what my parents used to do, that they used to sneak in the evening and come back very early in the morning, and we didn't know where they had gone. We tried to ask, what they, were doing, and they were hiding because they knew youngsters wouldn't actually keep the secret. So later on, when I was doing my Form 2, I happened to meet a group of guerrillas, and I was actually fascinated by the way how they were dressed with their guns, with their bags, and they looked very energetic to me, and I thought it was just something funny, and I thought I could do the same.
It was on the 5th of January 1973 where I saw the Zanla forces coming to our place. We were doing our studies at our classrooms. Then they called us to gather together to hear what are they saying. Then from that time, that's where I decided to go for the armed struggle.
With me, I was interested in the shooting itself. I said, but can I be able to use this thing which you have? And they said, oh yes, you can. So the first day I couldn't because they were afraid of being heard by the Smith soldiers. So they gave me a submachine gun, which they taught me how to dismantle and put back the parts and everything. And with this I was actually impressed. And the other thing which really impressed me was to put on a long trousers. This was really rare in our society, that a woman puts on a long trousers.
By the early 70s, the war began to affect every part of the country. The main nationalist bases were in neighboring states, Zambia and Mozambique. If local people were suspected of helping the guerrillas, the authorities tried to punish the whole community. Villagers found themselves being rounded up and moved out of the area, often at gunpoint.
People who were harassed by the army. At one time they burned down villages, crops, to punish those people because they were harboring the comrades. So we moved in with help, with blankets, clothing, simple planks for making doors. plastic sheeting for putting up on the house. It was in May 78. And that was on order from the district commissioner in Kwekwe. So he was, of course, terribly upset that we as the mission moved in helping those people they were to punish.
The regime had suspected the fathers were helping the guerrillas right from the start, but they were never able to get proof.
One day I was called by the catechist that the comrades have arrived in the area and he would like to see me. So we went together with a sister, had a meeting in a church, in a bush church. It was heavy raining. They with the guns, of course,